Attention is now on 2027 after the Osun election. What's going to happen in 2027 has been the deliberation in the lips of so many Nigerians, even though there are post-election reactions after the Osun State governorship election. Well, the question now is this: what is going to be part of the deciding factor in 2027? Can we say the youth's number is going to count during the polls? We look at 2027 election this morning, and of course want to see if Nigerian youths, can bring a change into the electoral system. What do you think about that? So we'll be looking at youth. Well, they said Nigerians make up largely 70 to 80% of the population in Nigeria. But then, how vibrant are youths when it comes to politics, when it comes to governance, when it comes to the push to make things happen the positive way? We'll look at all of that this morning as we have Dr. Glory. Let me be careful with this name right now. Ukwenga. Join us on the conversation today. She is the founder and executive director, Africana League. It's good to have you join us on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks for coming. I was very careful, not to murder that name. Now let's look at the capacity of Nigerian youths as it has to do with elections in this country. We're picking one or two from the Osun election and the elections that we've heard before. There is this narrative that the youths have settled for briefcase carrying. They want to be SAs, they want to be media aides and all of that. Now, what do you think about the potential of Nigerian youths when it comes to election? Come 2027 especially, that's our focus.
Well, with regards to the potential, I would say that I do not have very high expectations of what will be manifesting for young people. And the Osun State elections has given us an example of what is possible. But are we strategically and intentionally positioned to optimize that? That's what I cannot say from the data at this time, because we have not yet, as a constituency, determined, for instance, a very clear agenda for what young people want to see in the outcomes of the elections. We also do not have a very clear pipeline for constructive youth engagement. The opportunities for young people to mobilize at political party levels, at community levels, have not been fully operationalized as something that is constructively and predictably clear in terms of what the aspirations are, what the steps are, and what the outcomes are supposed to be. So whatever advantage that we might see in terms of the increased participation, the increased voter turnout with regards to young people, increased youth candidacy, if at all, I do not expect that it might necessarily translate, but the Osun State gives us hope that young people might be able to ride on the wave as something that is happening. And this is the challenge with our situation for youth in Nigeria. The lack of constructive systems to bet such processes means that we are in an age of social media able to ride on waves of something that is popular, that is trending. But it's not the ideal. What is ideal is if we have some system in place that we as youth know that this is what we're doing as a demography to convert the significant number that we have of being 70% of the population, about that figure, and in fact being about 71% of the newly registered voters as seen in the last elections, to actually a voting bloc that is able to say this is who we are, this is what we want, and this is the transformation we want to see in terms of electoral outcomes for 2027.
What's the problem with our youths?
Well, I want to let me add to what he has said. I think you've clearly spelled out a problem, but I would like you to break it down now. We clearly have a problem. We don't have maybe desired or the needed structure that would help us go from wishful thinking to the result we want to see. But then, where do we start from? Where is the problem coming from? Is it coming from our schools? Is it coming from our education system? Is it coming from our elders that did not inform us well? Where exactly is it coming from? Because I had a guest yesterday come on the program and he said, oh, we're trying when it comes to democracy. We are better than a lot of African countries. That was his comparison. But we know what we want. We know where we want to be. The fact that we are doing better than a Malawi or some country doesn't mean that we are where we want to be, because there is a goal, a collective goal that we have as a people, I mean as young people. So where is this problem coming from? Can it even be fixed? This is something we can fix in the next few months before 2027. This is something we'll have to take another 4 years to fix. Is it feasible?
It is feasible,
okay,
but certainly not by 2027 elections. Why? Because young people, I mean, typically, when we talk about youth mobilization for political participation, so the emphasis usually is on go get your PVCs and vote. But the idea of election cycles is a 4-year thing. It starts right after the next elections. That mobilization ought to begin.
Okay.
But let me take us back to the first question Ramsey asked. Where's the problem coming from? What's wrong with Nigerian youths? And he also asked the question in the same direction. Where is it coming from? Frankly, we cannot take responsibility for where the problem is coming from. There are political party structures that are not enabling for young people to engage. When you look at the idea of godfatherism, for instance, it appears that you can only aspire to certain positions if you only start, with the briefcase, becoming, just appendages of a lot of these politicians, being loyal, which means that you have to walk through, godfathers.
And
mentorship is really important. I have to say this. Mentorship is really key. We're at a time as a nation, for nation building, we need intergenerational collaboration on leadership. But when it is not intentional towards handing over to another generation, towards increasing responsibility so that people learn on the job, because leadership is a question of learning by doing, that's a problem. Then we come to the question of winning the political parties itself. What's the cost of nomination forms? Is it something that is accessible? Is it something that a genuine young person who is not getting money by some shady means can actually say that I can, get this? I mean, you're earning about 70,000 for minimum wage as a graduate. And then you have to grapple with a lot of economic challenges with regards to housing, with regards to even taking care of family now. With regards to all sorts of responsibilities that inflation is throwing at you. And then you have to grapple as well with the reality that you cannot meet up with the old guards in terms of the cost of elections, the cost of mobilizing, the cost of visibility. You know how much it is to buy airtime or TV, to run a campaign, so the average young person cannot afford this. Then again, we come to the reality that political parties themselves, who are the nucleus of our democracy, are not also intentionally building a very constructive political education mechanism for youth. They only use these young people to come make up the numbers, or come campaign for this person, come let us see that there is a crowd for so candidates. They're not saying the youth of social parties, these are the ideologies we want them to have, this is the quality of governance we want them to be able to deliver should they get the opportunity, and these are the things that we're looking out for in terms of character development, in terms of skills development, in terms of intentionally placing them very close to leadership to learn what responsibility actually is. So when we look at those challenges, and we marry that now with our challenge of economy, for which young people are heavily dependent on older generation people. I mean, before by the age of 30, you know what you can do with resources. Sure. You're married, you're building a family, you have a good job on standby. So even the challenges of even the education itself, I was discussing on another station sometime earlier, where the young person in Nigeria is significantly delayed. I had serious challenges of being set back for about 3 years with good JAMB scores and no admission for reasons I cannot explain. And by the time you're at a certain age, you already feel like, life has passed you by. So now you want to focus on what's the first thing, how do I survive? And you don't place leadership, and you don't place politics, you don't place nation building at the core of your focus, because you need to survive. So these are where the challenges are coming from. But it again does not take us off the responsibility as youth to ask what can we do. You ask the question, can it be fixed? The answer is yes. Certainly not by 2027. We at Africana League now, we are intentionally working to mobilize youth towards very clear agenda to say, as youth, as a constituency, as a demography, what do we want for the Nigeria we want? How do we produce our own candidates for elections, regardless of political parties, to have certain minimum standards of character and of impact within societies? And how do we measure that? So that we, the youth, can also know, okay, if we cannot trust certain older generation people, can we have alternatives that we have proven over time? And this is not a process that we're supposed to be expected to happen within a few months. We're expected to start heavily mobilizing on that post-2027 general elections.
Wow, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. The way you speak, it means there is hope for Nigeria, especially for the youths who have been told long time ago that they are the leader of a tomorrow that has never come. Now, let's get into the issue now. You know, there is this belief. We talked about carrying of briefcases and all of that, and not setting an agenda, more so that there is no conducive system through which these ideas will flow, build up, and take these youths there as leaders. Now, what do you think, all right, the youths, all right, need to do? The orientation. You said something very vital, and that is weaponizing poverty. Everyone is thinking of how they would survive, the immediate survivor, and not thinking about the future leadership that is right ahead of us, because there is a narrative that you need to get to a particular age. You need to belong to a cabal. You need to have a godfather that has influence before you get there. Now, how do we break through this? Because in real terms, it does exist. All right, and it's a big barrier. The youth of now, I'm talking about orientation now. I love what you spoke about, the Africana League. So how many of Africana leads do we have out there pushing this agenda with this singular idea? Because we need to all be together with one idea, with one goal and one pursuit before we can get there. Then there is unison. No one is saying, it's my uncle, I need to vote for him irrespective of age. So how do we achieve this?
So this is the model. First, we have built certain ideas around what it is that we want to do. That politics should be everybody's business. So you know, typically in the crimes that we envy, politics and political participation is meant to be a vocation because you care for your country. And why do you care? You understand that politics produces political leaders. Political leaders are the ones who, you know, curate policy outputs and shape political outcomes. So if you say that politics is your business, you are something else, a professional skill at something and delivering value to the society on something specific before you are engaging as a politician. That's the first thing. Okay, and the second thing is, we know that a great nation and a great leader, they are not just self-existing. They are built intentionally, they are made. We do say that a leader is not born but made. And he or she is born or made by understanding that the system will be acknowledging of effort, will be able to reward where commitment has been given, and at the same time could also create punitive measures for misdemeanors when they happen. That's the biggest problem with our system right now. So what is it that we are doing about addressing this aspect? We are creating a very clear agenda to say, for instance, that come 2031 elections, we want to produce 1,000 young candidates for elections. Across political parties, we talk about end-to-end solutions, because a lot of people come to us and say, oh, you need to create your own political party. We don't want to solve a problem by creating another. We already have a plethora of political parties that are not ideologically driven. And so we want to mobilize these youth through the youth wings of various political parties to sit with us and say, what do we want as youth, regardless of political party affiliation? And then we are creating a leadership determining pipeline. We're building it through a clear application system that will be self-regulating. It's going to have the capacity to evaluate young people who are doing impactful things in terms of community development. It's going to be able to evaluate even character assessments and all of that as feedbacks are coming. And from there, anybody from even the diaspora or even the older generation can look and say, okay, who's the best person for Osun State if I want to support this quality of youth, if I want to bring them closer, if I want to put our resource behind them. Other youths will also know who to back up, because a lot of the the whole idea of apathy comes from feeling like you have no stakes. I don't have any stakes, the outcomes doesn't concern me, and people have predetermined the outcomes. So we want to be able to have young people see other youth as emerging. When they see that it is possible, then we bring that to the realm of reality. Not Too Young to Run bill has been signed since 2018. And what that means is that from the age of 25, a youth can't contest elections. It is not at that age of 25 that they are to build the aspiration. The aspiration is built way before. And that is one thing we want to be able to do. Be able to carry intentionally along young people from the age of even 15 to 18 to become intentional about doing community impact projects, documenting them, understanding what leadership means in terms of learning by doing, getting even feedback. Some of them, when they do projects like that, they'll come back and say, oh, now I feel like a hero. In the first instance, that person is one less problem to the society. In the second instance, that person is now more intentional about political outcomes to say, oh, who actually emerges. The third thing is, why can't I? And that's one of the things, that's where African League as an organization is starting from in terms of constructive political mobilization.
I like the fact that you have your own CSR that you have mapped out to make this, doable at the end of the day. But collectively, let's see how it would actually work out, because African League is just, an entity. I know you guys can do your best, but for this to be possible, everyone has to play their part.
Right.
We need to see intentional hands in the education sector. We need to see intentional hands in every single sector of the country. Do you see the government really playing their own part to ensuring this? And do you think it's possible for only private corporations like yourself, to make this a reality?
If we're being honest, you cannot ask people who are already sitting in the government to hold the responsibility for this level, this kind of transformation. Okay, and frankly speaking, to be fair, the government ought to be governing. They ought to be concerned about policy. And frankly speaking, also, political parties would have been the best institutions for us to target, and that's why we're targeting, from the youth wing of political parties. But in general, here's one thing I want young people to understand. Okay, as a youth, you build the aspiration. Some people have worked for Not Too Young to Run, and they did it with the intention of removing the legal frameworks, the barriers in that regard. Okay, let's make it count by getting ourselves involved. Okay, that's the first thing. We have to know that we ourselves matter to Nigeria, and that we have stakes in this country beyond just the idea of being born as a citizen. Okay, the second thing is, the way to make that stop being such a big heavily task in our brains is to understand that leadership starts from community levels. Because when a young person wants to build aspirations, they want to say, for instance, like people tell me, oh, we see you being the first female president of Nigeria. That's not how leadership really works. You're not building the aspiration top down. You build bottom up, okay? And you engage first with the substructure of society, then you build that over the years to the superstructure, okay? So, from community development levels, can we aspire to ward councillorship? Can we aspire to local government leadership? And even if you do not want to build those leaders, because it's possible to not everybody has to be in front.
Exactly.
You intentionally ask, who is this person who are interested in going for these positions? Find out about these people. The more you find out, engage. If you like someone enough, do your best to begin to support them. Start working with young people. Start looking for, not just necessarily youth candidates, please. Look for questions of character and capacity. Proven capacity evidenced over time with what they've done. With the age of in an age of social media, we have we can't easily find out information, and there's also the Freedom of Information Act, which gives us the opportunity to ask questions from institutions. These are things we can do. Okay, so we find out at these lower levels, ward councillorship, local government levels, and let us engage from there. Once you engage, you will start finding yourself in certain forums. You will find yourself in meetings. You'll find yourself in community dialogue sessions. You will build. I'm here because certain things, exposure linked me up to these institutions.
I like the word exposure.
Right.
I honestly think that all of this is very possible, but it takes a person that is driven by purpose to decide to want to engage in all this at these different levels you have just mentioned. Someone that is wondering what am I? What am I doing here? what's the use of my life? I mean, I'm going to a problem.
Self-discovery.
Do you understand? There's nobody around me that matters. You're still dealing with relevance on a personal level. It's almost impossible to start having such kind of thoughts to engage, at the platforms or at the very states you are already, talking about. I think we're taking it a bit higher. I want us to break it down, like come to the lowest, the barest minimum of the common Nigerian youth that is still struggling to get a job, that is still struggling to fend for themselves. That these are the population they target when it comes to elections, because you feel if I give you this relief material, you can just come and I can use it as a puppet and I'll get what I want, I get the numbers. These are usually the very purpose-driven, self-motivated Nigerian youths that already have the vision. They are not usually the target. So, and they don't make so much of the population, right? So, the more population of undiscovered, lack of purpose-driven youths, the more it is to have a nation that doesn't work. True. So let's target those people. How can we help them?
Okay, so frankly, those ones who do not have that sense of identity yet, okay, who do not, who have not defined who they are and what
they very funny home and trying to understand what life is, trying to get themselves, like you said, get
probably background, upbringing, association.
Certain, they cannot be the ones to start the process.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
The process starts from those of us that are opportune enough to give back to the nation. And I use myself a lot as a historian. When I say that a leader is not born but made, you see, I don't blame the typical Nigerian youth for the levels of apathy and the levels of disconnection that they feel with the idea of the nation. Frankly speaking, the typical Nigerian experiences early what it feels to be like the country has betrayed them. When you look at things that you understand that citizens of other nations can take for granted, and you as an individual coming into adulthood have to figure those things out, and you're figuring it out with all the pressure of social expectations of what you ought to be doing, or being compared to your siblings, or being compared to your classmates. Have power behind the scenes supporting their development. There's, it is inevitable that you feel that disconnect. I am lucky and I am aware of my privilege as somebody who has been helped. Quite frankly, God had to reveal to a pastor who called me and said, God said I should tell you that everything about your education, that your fears are taken away, all about your education, I'm going to take care of it. And I didn't have to seek admission from the public institutions that have failed me 3 times for no reason. Okay. You see, I had to then seek that, opportunity with a private institution. How many typical Nigerian youth can have that? Exactly. And the reason why someone like me is this committed is because I know that I am a beneficiary of grace. Do you get that? Sure. So we have to first and foremost own up to the realities that youths are experiencing. That some of us that are here simply by privilege. That certain people have seen us at certain times, whether the Holy Spirit had to inform them, or some other means, maybe they saw your flash of brilliance and decided, no, I can't let this talent go to waste, and then they decided to commit. What about the millions of population that are by the wayside? So the responsibility is on us. Now, what is it that we are to do for these young persons? I am intentional about mentorship, quite frankly, to a lot of young people, but there's only so much that I as an individual can do. There are also many other people in the civic space, and we have to give them credit for the work that they've been doing. The level of resource and mobilization and networking and messaging, duplicity of information, that it would have taken even to break that legal barrier. We have to appreciate that that's being done. But to carry these other young people along, that's why we engage at community development levels. At communities, we find that the youths are the most actually available, visible, and impactful. That is where you see the influence of youth most significantly. Most communities across Nigeria, once you ask for who is the youth leader, they can point that person out. Okay? So we are intentional about mobilizing from that level. But the thing is that it's not by magic. It's a gradual, incremental process of transformation. Orientation, especially when it's not being actively backed by the government in tangible terms. Because again, I would give kudos to National Orientation Agency. they do what they can. And frankly, when we call them for programs, any fora, there are one institution that I can guarantee they'll be there. The DJ will definitely send someone to represent. Sometimes I find that they correct some wrong information. They are also able to share some other information. But they always tell you, for these things we want to do, it's a good idea, but we don't have money. We don't have money. The government is not prioritizing this national reorientation. Okay? They are not well funded to really make the quantum of impact that I know their team have the capacity to deliver. And they too are aware of this problem. But the question is always, what can we do about it? So we are multiplying our numbers as much as possible. We're doing this at community grassroots levels. We are even establishing civic leadership clubs now. And thankfully, even the educational system has introduced civic education to our young persons. But, we need it to be much more practical. So when you say, for instance, what it means to be a citizen, what it means to do a campaign, we need to make it practical. But I also understand that the government is sensitive. They have to be careful to not bring the quality of youth that can appear to oppose them.
Sure, they always do that.
But again, that's also where collaboration is needed. It's our responsibility also, which we also are actively engaged in. Transforming the minds of these young people towards constructive engagement. Because eventually when you become the leader, you would need the support of the people to make and sustain policies. You see, so you were not going to build a nation with chaos. The question of nation building will not be achieved by bringing the nation down. We are going to achieve it by understanding that we ourselves are stakeholders of government. We are stakeholders as citizens of the nation. We have to define what the idea of the nation we are building is, and then remind every single person that your mission is not to fight government per se. You are to be a watchdog, to hold accountability mechanisms, to ask the right questions, to follow up the process keenly.
Sometimes when you're asking those questions, it looks as if you're fighting. But let's not go there, because no government wants you to ask questions.
They don't even want you to ask, like you said something now about our political practice not having ideology. We fought that times without number on issues, because some will claim they have ideology, others, in fact, they will be antagonizing themselves. So now, talking about political practice not having ideology and the youth-oriented political practice that we have, because I've interviewed some persons and they said, for my political party, form is literally free. There is a 50% slash. And in fact, for women and people with disability, it is free. I've interviewed people like that. Now, the major problem for me, like you talk about critical engagement now, the distraction on social media, our youths, wrong narratives everywhere. And this is giving people, a lot of our youths, wrong direction, all right, because of the way they are addicted to social media. So how do we deal with this influence to get these people, all right, to get their attention? Because where your mind, where there's your heart, So what do we do, all right, to rechannel their thinking, their mentality, their focus, and their attention, so that we can pursue this very unique goal, at least making them, because a lot of Nigerians, sorry to say this, don't believe in this country as we speak. A lot of them. All right. So how do we handle this? More so that you're going to the grassroots, you talked about the community. How do we integrate this setup, this ideology? How do we correct these anomalies?
Okay. Thankful to social media, young people have been able to realize for the first time that they have platforms for expression that are not directly controlled by the overbearing older generation. You see?
Let them know for that.
Yeah. And honestly, it presents both a challenge but a huge opportunity. Okay, for political education, for constructive civic engagement. We did see what it manifested with the NSAS. That was not a win for grassroots or narrative for grassroots mobilization. No, it was social media. And it also should show us that young people are not as uncaring about the idea of Nigeria. They just don't trust the channels through which they can gain this expression. And with social media, they feel a little bit at ease and at liberty to express what it is they have to say. They will express, and they will want to manifest where they feel powerful to some extent. So how do we manage that? As much as it is an opportunity for mobilization, it is also an opportunity for constructive political information sharing, for reorientation. Again, a lot of things are being done, but we also have to accept that it is an incremental process. Change is a process. It's not something that just happens overnight. Even the things that you can sometimes see that, they become sporadically erupting in society, it's been brewing somewhere in the background. We always talk about the latent cause, the remote causes, and then the immediate causes. So the immediate causes get visible, but they're not necessarily what is the root. So here's what we can do. We are optimizing mechanisms for visibility for these young persons. You see, on social media, two things that it satisfies for youth is the feeling of attaining celebrity status and then making money. Okay? And so the creative solutions that we are coming up with this is, we created a show which we call Nigerians of Commons. I don't know if you're familiar with. Last year it was a parliamentary program where young people came, represented the states of Nigeria and the FCT. You remember the program? Yes. And the target for that was so that we maximize visibility for youth. You see, when young people think that the idea of young people is to actually put themselves in the good light. But if the bad light is what's giving me this visibility and people are liking, in the age of this thing we are calling Oloyo uprising now, I'll go for that if it gives me money, if it gives me
especially when the economy is biting.
Exactly. This is the reality that the average young person is grappling with. So we are creating constructive alternatives.
Constructive alternatives.
You understand? So that they can gain this visibility, people can know them, and it's not just about saying, I'm on a TV show, just like I am here. It's also about saying that if I want to apply for opportunities, both in Nigeria and on the global sphere, these are things that I can't show as a part of my portfolio to the world. To say I've been contributing, to say that people know me and that they know me for positive things. It's also about opening them up to opportunities, work opportunities as well. In this day and age, people also would do their due diligence to look up how you present yourself on social media. And we give them this opportunity to say, these are alternative platforms that make you seem like a good human being. And you see, the good thing with it is, the more people do the right thing, the less, the more immune they are, the less prone they are to go to the wrong thing. Because now there is also the question of identity building. You now imagine a young person finding himself in a conference or in a dialogue session or on TV. They're just a little more conscious now, starting from how they dress to how they speak. Because in the trainings, the first thing we'll tell them, you go clean up your social media. Or if you go there abusing people, and you want to abuse government, you want to just abuse it, just keep abusing emptily. You don't have to always support everything, but you engage constructively. You don't go presenting yourself as a wrong candidate or as a wrong future leader. You tell the world how they should see you, and you have the power to determine that. So that whole process of training, reorientation, pairing them up, peer-to-peer mentorship are the things we are doing. But again, there's only so much that one person, one institution can do. A number of people are working at it, but we expect to see the transformation, especially, come 2031 elections.
This is great.
Wow, we can go on and on.
This is great.
I just wish we could take you, but our time is fast spent.
Well, I don't know, but Nika, you're returning.
I'll be glad to.
You're returning. Okay, lady, I say, okay, yes. This is constructive, this is engaging, this is informative, this is educative. Well, I don't know, but then we'll talk more. I have like 10 more questions here. But then maybe that will be next time. Okay. Thank you very much for joining us in this conversation. Thank you for driving home the point. We hope to have you again. All right, everyone, now it's time for us to get into the second conversation. Global Warning is loaded for you today as usual. So after this break, will engage more on the matters arising from the Osun election and all the APC claims. Stay with us. We'll return after this break.